All right, ski-doodly. Time to talk about the Club World Cup. Ha! Just kidding. Now we're talking about Lyon. Because obviously, I mean, this is the biggest thing that's happened today. And we spent a little time on stream trying to digest exactly what happened. I'm recording these after stream today. Oh, sorry. I've been working on this new stream thing that looks a lot like Zealand's stream. You might have heard of Zealand. We get compared to each other sometimes, but no, I was just messing around with that. My stream's obviously completely different. Anyways, I was messing around on stream. We were talking about the Lyon situation. It's actually when the news broke was while I was streaming the whole Lyon situation. And this is heartbreaking, but that is not anywhere close to my biggest, most important takeaway on this. Because Lyon's been caught holding the bag on about 500 million euros in debt. This was kind of the first article we were able to get our hands on that came out from goal.com. It was basically just regurgitating the report from RMC Sport about what had happened. And basically, very briefly, Lyon last year had gone into a meeting about their dire financial situation. It's not unbelievably dire, but it's bad, right? It is not a good financial situation. And as we've learned from Bordeaux getting yeeted into the sun last year, the DNCG, the financial regulatory arm of French football, they do not fuck around. They come out swinging. They're chucking knucks, okay? And Lyon basically was given a year. They made promises. John Textor, of course, is their owner. He's this rambunctious American. He also owns Botafogo. He was in the ownership group of Crystal Palace, right? He is somebody that has gone toe-to-toe with PSG. He gets himself in the headlines. And so he was making big promises. He was saying that we were going to do this, we were going to do that. They, of course, sold Ryan Cherky. They've sold a couple other guys. They've lightened the books. We didn't know what promises they had made to the DNCG. We didn't know. But there are a couple of factors that were also out of their control. The French league did not exactly get the TV contract that it was looking for when it went onto the market to get a new TV deal. So that is obviously going to put a dent in the financial aspirations of a lot of teams, or in the case of Lyon, the desperate need to get enough money so that the DNCG doesn't relegate them too. Fast forward a year, they have the meeting, and they get fucking rocked. Obviously. You probably read the headline, but they have been relegated to League Two. Lyon, one of the big premier names in France. It's one thing for it to be Bordeaux, right? A recognizable name. But Lyon, for the last however many years, has been one of the clubs in France, developing talents, competing with the rising star of PSG, making it, by the way, fairly recently to a Champions League semifinal, right? That was not that long ago. That club, 500 million euros in debt, is now relegated by the DNCG. What does that mean? It means that Lyon is probably going to be playing in the second division of France next year. Now, they do have the opportunity to appeal this, but they also had the opportunity for the previous year to fix the problem, and they still fucking haven't done that. So I would not imagine there's a lot they can change over the next month, or whatever the deadline is before the league calendar turns over, that they can somehow find that and show it to the DNCG and be like, hey, look, you know what I'm talking. We're fine. We're fine. All that stuff we did over the previous year, yeah, forget about it. We managed to sell somebody for, the guy they would sell for a lot of money is Ryan Cherky, and they sold him for a little over 40 million euros, which you feel like they might have been able to get more more than that, but they clearly were trying to get some money to rub together to impress the DNCG, and whatever happened at the end of the day, they weren't impressed. And so Lyon is now fit to be relegated, and we have, the second time in 2 seasons a team is getting launched out of Ligue 1. Now, obviously, Bordeaux was in a worse situation, ended up going bankrupt, and is now in the 4th division. At least they had Andy Carroll for a year, right? But they're honestly, realistically speaking, it's going to be a very long time until we see Bordeaux at anywhere near its former glory. Lyon is not there yet. But the way it snowballed for Bordeaux is they had a plan, they got sent down to the 3rd division, and then they couldn't get that plan in place, and then they ended up being sent down to the 4th division. I don't believe that when you have somebody with the resources and, almost more importantly, the steel-headed swagger and determination of John Textor, I don't believe that we're going to see another Bordeaux situation where they go down to League Two and then they all of a sudden, things snowball, because they can snowball when you're working with the DNCG. But I also, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe they're going to be playing in the 1st division next year. I don't think they are. I mean, this is dropping on June 24th. June 24th, this is dropping. The next season is less than 2 months away. I mean, you are going to have to pull out some pretty spectacular moves to impress the notoriously scrupulous financial people at the DNCG. Right? Now, I don't know what moves they can pull. They're in the Europa League, not the Champions League. I mean, I know that probably already factored into the projections, but there isn't a ridiculous financial windfall coming. Right? They're not necessarily being tapped, they're not being tipped to be way better than they were this past year. Right? So maybe you can reel in some other sponsors, or maybe you have another big time player that you're able to sell for a lot of money. There just isn't a path to financial safety for Lyon that is obvious. I mean, you could start to try to go the Barcelona route, but let's be perfectly honest, the La Liga doesn't have the same teeth as the DNCG does. They've proven that. Right? Barcelona was able to, break the financial salary rules and then still play their player for like 6 months and their league title counts, right? Because the court just moves too slow and granted an injunction in the meantime, right? That's the sort of stuff that's happening there. But Barcelona has obviously invented some ways to manufacture money in the short term. And Lyon might try to take on some of those things, right? They might try to sell some of their future media rights, sell extra luxury box in the stadium, sell naming rights to the stadium. I don't know what the situation is, right? Barcelona's done all of those things, right, to try and make money. We might see Lyon try and go into that bag. But I think the situation for Lyon, right, highlights a bigger, where's the Fabrizio tweet? There it is. It highlights a bigger issue within the game. I feel like, and I've said this before, and France is starting to prove us right, a lot of teams are close to being here. I mean, look at what happened. Manchester United's making money hand over fist, and they still managed to spin their way into a dire situation financially just because they had a couple of bad seasons. And they're getting Premier League money. Teams in the bottom half of Spain, teams in Italy, teams in France. There are a lot of teams. If you really cracked open the books, really got in there, or if you had something equivalent to the DNCG's firepower in Spain, in Italy, really going after these teams and bringing them in and having meetings all the time the way they do in France, I think there would be 1-2 clubs a year getting launched out. I mean, because that's what's happening in France. We have now lost a brand name club from the top league in consecutive years, this being bigger than the last one. The problem is these guys, I mean, in football clubs in general, they're spending more money than they have, right? In certain cases like Leeds, they live the dream, and it's so damn obvious that, they go into administration. They literally can't find another way to pay for anything. In an instance like Lyon, they're just carrying a large club debt. They got €500 million in club debt, but it's been there. It's not like it's getting worse. It's just there. The problem is, for France anyways, and the French financial authorities, is that this is unacceptable, right? That you have this branch in the DNCG that's job is to try to make sure that the clubs are being run in a healthy financial way. And it might seem annoying. It might seem annoying that they're running around and being maybe even too strict in terms of sending these teams down or punishing these teams would be the better way to say it. But the alternative is you end up with guys like the owner at Reading, right, where he's not able to pay for anything, or you're not validating financials. You end up with a whole host of disaster scenarios where, you aren't sure where the money's coming from, or somebody lied about the amount of money they have. So you need this kind of strict financial control to guarantee that clubs don't get destroyed from the inside out. But the problem is once you have it, you have to have a way to punish clubs that are not adhering to the financial standard. And that oftentimes makes it worse. This is where I struggle with this the most, is the punishment here really, really makes them worse off. I mean, Bordeaux is dead. I mean, not actually. They still have great fans and everything, but Bordeaux is dead in the water. They murdered the team. They sent them down to the third division, and they promptly went bankrupt because they couldn't find a way to restructure the team at that level. They lost their professional license, right? You're looking at a team like Lyon. Going down to the second division is not going to help Lyon pay off €500 million in debt. It's going to make it harder. Now, obviously, maybe you're trying to create a sense of urgency. You're trying to light a fire under their ass and be like, hey, you probably should do something about this. We're going to relegate you. But I have a new idea. I've come up with what is hopefully a better idea. Because I think this sort of automatic enforced relegation is a little too toxic and definitely can really screw a club. So my idea is as follows. If you have a club that runs afoul of the rules, you impose a transfer embargo. The way you can do this as a league is you prevent the club from being able to register new players. You put a transfer embargo on until they're able to meet the requirements. You also, if you want to be a little stricter, can institute a wage cap. The wage cap would potentially allow the team to sign free agents or something to paper over different holes in the squad, but you would be encouraging them to promote young players. You would allow players that are already at the club, obviously, to be registered, so U21, whatever. But you don't relegate them. You leave them in the same league, and you put them under a transfer embargo. This would obviously make it tougher for the team to win, but I believe that it would seriously impress upon the team, right? It would make an impact on the mentality of the team. It would help the team understand that they need to do something. Right? It would help the team understand that they need to solve this problem without putting them in a situation where it is much more difficult for them to solve it. It would also not create a situation where teams are artificially being shuffled around the leagues. A transfer embargo, potentially a wage cap, until you are financially compliant. This means you'd be selling players, and obviously you would be incredibly highly motivated to become financially compliant in whatever way you could do it. But you'd be given maybe that extra year or two before you perhaps get relegated to try and figure that out. You'd be wearing the punishment on your sleeve, but you wouldn't be immediately put in a position where your finances are in. Yeah, I mean, because honestly, these clubs like Lyon, they would have included in the contracts with their jersey provider or whatever, that if they get relegated, they lose a certain amount of money, right? This relegation is instantly going to have a overnight contractual impact on the income of the club, and it's going to make it more difficult for Lyon to pay off its debts. There isn't 500 million euros sitting around in the second division. But for a club Lyon's size, with Lyon's quality, they're going to be playing in Europe. They're going to try to get into Europe again. Just keep them from buying new players. Shut them down. Honestly, prevent them from spending money. Because that's the problem in the first place. Stop them from spending money. You can do that as a league. So do it. But back to the beginning, this is sad. I don't like seeing this. I wish people that ran football clubs were smarter about not spending too much money. I realize it's hard, but resist. Do not give in to temptation or something.